These Saturday mornings have been fantastic, and I'm sitting here and watching the sun come up, and I can't think of anything that makes me more proud than knowing we're getting the conversation rolling on families, on fatherhood, and people are using their weekends productively instead of just trying to kill time until Monday.
How are the new digs, Zach? Are y'all settled in?
Yeah, man, it's better than we could have imagined. We bought this house unseen. So when we got here to pretty much sign the papers the next day, it that was our first time seeing it outside of online and like virtual Zooms. But I mean, it's blown us away. And what's really cool about it is this is my kid's first year going to public school. So not only are we in a new town and all these new things, but it's their first exposure to actually like a bigger school. So this discussion couldn't be more timely.
Yeah, that's cool. I really wanted to talk about that uh, in this conversation specifically was dealing with kids kids going into new schools and making new friends, parting with old friends. That's something that's a big concern, especially with my wife as she grew up uh, changing a lot of schools, and she said it really affected her. So that's a big consideration for us. Our son is 3 years old, so next year he's starting school, and so that's a big consideration for us in terms of okay, do we want to live in this city for a bit? Um, how do we get prepared if we are going to make a move and go into a new school? And so very excited. This conversation for me personally is going to be a I'll be learning a lot. I'm very excited to hear everyone's take on the public school system, um, whether it be uh, at home schooling, private school. So very excited.
Yeah, man. There's definitely a lot of opinions out there about the state of the public school system, and I think a lot of people are rightly kind of concerned about where the direction things are heading in terms of what the curriculum is and what kids are getting taught. And the framework I use is I understand that there's a huge movement for homeschooling in the U.S. right now, and I'm assuming more broadly. And I think it's a
I'm
great
on a
thing,
call.
beautiful thing when parents make that investment in their kids. In fact, somebody shared some stats with me the other day. When,
Much love and respect from Philippines. I just want to say
hello,
hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. So we're gonna be taking questions in a bit. Just I'm getting a lot of requests already, which is good. But yeah, if you see someone speaking, if you could just mute your mic, that would be best. Uh, Sorry. Go on. Save your sons.
yeah, no worries. I was just saying somebody showed me some statistics the other day that said I want to say it was up to 11% of kids in the U.S. were homeschooled over the past year, and obviously a lot of that is due to the COVID restrictions, and I don't know how long that'll sustain, and we may see a drop off of that when people are sort of back in school and back to normal if that ever happens. But it definitely shows that there's momentum and there's desire for parents to take more control over their kids' education. And for our family, we're not there yet. We haven't had to make that tough decision yet. I will say that homeschooling is not an option for everybody, as great as it is. And so for people that are in that position where both parents have to work, or there's only one parent at home and they have to work and they can't possibly homeschool their kids, well, what I say to parents in that position is homeschooling may be impossible for you, and as great as it is, that it's not for everyone. But what isn't an option, and what we must do no matter what, is ensure that our kids get a home curriculum. So we make that distinction between homeschooling and a home curriculum when homeschooling is not an option and we're sending them to a public school or a private school or a charter school, whatever it is. We have to make sure that no matter what happens, we're very intentional about the lessons we're teaching our kids, the subject matter we're teaching our kids, the timing we're teaching it to them. And so that's sort of the framework that we're using as we plan for these decisions. is that no matter what we do, no matter what position we're in, when it's time to decide, do we want to send our kids to school or do we want to school them at home? We know that no matter what, there's certain things that we're teaching them at home, and we have to be at least as loud of a voice, preferably far louder and much more influential than the messaging that they may or may not be getting elsewhere.
I love that, man. That's a great take, great point. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Oh, shoot. Sorry.
I would back up that point, Kyle, of Save Your Sons, and thanks for saying that. This is Tyler. That I see a lot of fear just in so many people I know around everything, and this is a big one where a lot of parents I talk to are afraid to send their kids because of curriculum that you may or may not agree with. There's definitely a lot that I don't agree with, but I always go back to that exact point: is hey, man, especially when we have young kids now, when they hit 17, 18, I don't know about that. Our influence probably isn't as much, but for the time being, when they're small, man, if we're super intentional around the time that we have with them, and even curating their friends and what they're doing, their activities, are they zoning out on iPads all day, or are we outside playing adventure, having these lessons, these talks all the time? I don't think you need to be as afraid of that as maybe they go and they learn some things. But my daughter comes home, she's in public school, first grade, and will say, hey, they one of our teachers told us that the Bible isn't real, something like that. And she just tells us that. We have open conversations around that all the time. Well, not everybody believes that, Tinley, but we do in our family. This is why we do. Let's read about it. Let's talk about it, this and that. So I don't think, I think there is a lot of what I would call unwarranted or unnecessary fear around, oh my gosh, my kid's going to be brainwashed into this or that. Well, if you've put the time in at home and you've had those conversations at home, I think you should still feel okay about it, because then they can lead to even more conversations at home.
No, I think you hit the nail there, Tyler. That's not only is it well said, but it's important that we hit that early on in this discussion. We shouldn't be afraid of having this discussion. We shouldn't be afraid of our children facing opposing opinions. We shouldn't have any fear, when it comes to our child going to school, because it's supplemental to what's taking place within the home. So as long as we're focused on what we're doing within the home, it doesn't matter if your kid was in a private school. If the home life isn't on point, your kid's not going to be on point. If you're homeschooling, but you're not putting in the reps to give them any love outside of just academia, your child is not getting the best. So it's not about the school they're going to, it's about the relationship within the home. And then everything stems from there. I caught a lot of pushback privately and respectfully, but people are like, well, why are you going from homeschooling to public schooling? Well, because my children asked me to. I asked them what they wanted to do, and they both, were very promoting or wanting to go to a new school to meet these new kids and make some new friends. So who am I to say no? Of course, go ahead. You can try it out. Worst case scenario, if this is total chaos and mayhem within the school, then you come home. It's all good. We'll figure it out. I don't know why there's such I think the term fear is correct in this situation. People are afraid of, well, what if they talk about critical race? What if there are bullies? What if these are very good moments for your children to learn how to handle these things? What happens in the workforce when there's somebody that they've got to work with and they can't handle it? What happens when their boss is acting a certain way or pushing a certain message? This is where we teach our children those life skills, and they can still come home. They can still, come back. Hey, Dad, they said the Bible wasn't real. How do I navigate that? Well, let's have that discussion, because in life, when people come after your faith, here's how you navigate that. This is great opportunity for you guys, and it's nothing but positive opportunity. And as long as they know Dad's there, and Dad loves them, and Mom loves them, and they're gonna have a great time, I'm not worried about school at all, man. And I'm now in a small North Carolina town. Everybody seems to know everybody, so my kids, I think, are going to do very well here. But even then, we're not afraid about this. This is an adventure, and all of it stems from the home. If the home's locked in, everything outside the home will be fine.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I love that. And my sister she lives in Chicago, and she manages pretty large property there. And she actually says that, there's kids coming out of college now that need safe spaces, that are 24, 25 years old, that literally she had a 24-year-old bring her dad in to tell my sister that she wasn't treating her fair, and I look at some of these things and I think, okay, maybe they went to private school, public school. It doesn't matter because they never learned how to face any adversity in their life, right? And so to me, yeah, if somebody's telling my daughter something that maybe our family doesn't agree with, to me, it's almost even a blessing. I can take it a step further because it opens the door for those other conversations. I don't want her to get out into the real world at 24, 25, having never faced any adversity, having never faced any of these things. So I kind of reframe it as, you know what, if you're going to talk critical race theory, that's fine, because then we're going to come home and we're going to dissect it and we're going to talk about it.
Dude, I love that you considered that a blessing. I grew up being bullied in school, and for a long time, really, it was hurting me growing up in my self-confidence and stuff. But now looking back, and how my parents handled it, I do consider it a blessing because I learned so much. My parents enrolled me into martial arts at a very young age, and I learned the value of self-discipline, self-respect, and that wouldn't have happened had I not been bullied. And I wouldn't have learned certain behavioral issues of kids, and now I have that gift and knowledge to share with my kid if he has to be faced with bullying at school or whatever. So things happen for you for a reason, and so as long as you apply those lessons and share them with your children, that's what matters.
Yeah, we don't prepare the path for the child. We prepare the child for the path. It's one of my favorite old quotes. And by sheltering our kids from the inevitable conflicts and difficulties that they're going to face when they get older, we're doing them absolutely zero favors. And so I love thinking about it the way you guys are talking about.
Save your son. I come to your Twitter page every day to see your quotes, man. How have I not seen that quote? That one's brilliant, man.
I can't take credit for that one. I don't remember who said it, but I'll dig it up and maybe throw it out there again this week.
Something I was thinking too, as with every, future fathers, guys who have questions, raise the hand or start asking those. We can answer specific questions. But I mean, we could just roll through our decisions, things we've faced, and kind of bouncing that around. I mean, I know a lot of people, their kids started school last Monday. I think Anthony's did. So, and that was a new school. So I'm going to be picking his brain. Some kids, I think, mine obviously, but I think there are a few other schools that are starting this coming Monday. So now is the time to ask the question so you can stay proactive in all of this. You should have already been talking to your kid. What happens if you disagree with your teacher? What happens if a political discussion, a mask, vaccine, whatever hot topic finds its way in the classroom? How do you navigate that? I think parents having this discussion now will prepare and have that child standing taller and more firm in their convictions and their beliefs when they're pressed in a public setting. So to me, I think this is all about being proactive, having these discussions now, preparing your kids, and not even in a sense of like doom and gloom, but like, hey, what an opportunity. Go ahead and make some friends. Maybe try a new sport this year. Maybe this is the year that, you go and you put yourself in something you've not been comfortable with. Like my son hates art, but he likes computers. This is his first year being able to take a computer class. He's super pumped. So we've been talking, all right, cool. How can we best work that? So it's not just the negatives of bullying and, politics, if you will. It's also the positives of, hey, let's get the most out of this year that you can. And again, having the conversation now will have their eyes open to looking for those opportunities.
Absolutely. I think we got a request here. The Chronicles of Life, you're up.
Good morning, guys from Philadelphia. How you doing?
Doing well.
Philly, what's up?
Yeah. So I have a quick question. Okay, I'm a father of 4, divorced, and the mother refuses to co-parent. For example, I was told my son was going to go into one school, but got notified last night that he's going to a completely different school that I was never brought in the loop about. And then we're obviously having some severe custody issues, but how does one parent try to co-parent with another parent who refuses to co-parent?
In this situation, I would say your job is not to be the co-parent to that woman. She is choosing her path. Your job right now is to have the best relationship with the child that you can. Continue to try to keep that rope out there, put that hand out there, try to meet the mother in the middle. But you're divorced. It sounds like it wasn't the best of situations, especially with finding out last night your kid's going to a new school. The most important thing here is that you stay cool, calm, collected, and do the absolute best you can with the time that you have with those children. Getting mad about this school situation does nothing for your kid. Talking to your kid about, hey, a new school, a new opportunity, that's great. Eventually, your children will grow and become adults of their own, and they will see my dad was always there. My dad never spoke bad about my mother. My dad always had my back. My dad loved me. And when they're adults, they will know that my dad is a good man, regardless of anything they may hear from the other side of the party.
Gotcha. All right, Zach, I appreciate it. And by the way, we have a mutual friend in common, George Bruno.
Yeah, Big George. I love George.
Yeah, he cuts my hair. One great guy.
Lucky man. I wish you could cut my hair. I got to find a barber.
Yep. All right, guys, I'm going to continue listening. I'm going to let someone else have the floor. Take care.
Coach Raj, you got something? Coach Raj, you're up.
Bueller.
All right. All right. Well, if anyone does have any more questions or whatever, just send a request and we'll get you on board here. How would
I think
how,
even
how,
to
how
back
do,
up that.
sorry, go
Sorry.
go ahead, Tyler. It's all good.
I was just going to say that, I talked to a lot of divorced men and that share custody. And to go along with that point, I think the most important thing for a child's success in that kind of dynamic and environment is, again, to be that rock. And I think you need to picture that every single day, that I'm the rock. Hey, there's unstableness going, my kid, it's not stable to be going to one school one day, the next, but what if you add to that and say, you see your son and then say, I can't believe your mom did that or this or that, or, that's just going to keep adding to your kid's stress. So I think you've got to come up in your mind and be that kind of one force that's present in his life. That's that strong man that never says a negative word about mom. That, again, exactly what Zach says. Hey, this is an opportunity. This is a blessing. We can go make more. No matter how negative that situation might be, you turn it into a positive. You turn it into, hey, we can make the best of this. And then to Zach's point, I think, you'll always be looking back. You'll be the one thing in his life that was stable, that was forced, that was a calm amongst the storm. And I think that's got to be your ultimate goal there.
And I would say, to bring that to the broad discussion on schooling, your point there on it being a positive, this is an opportunity, similar to Save Your Sons. We're going to prepare this child for the path. These are all opportunities. We can shift all these things that are normally thrown to us as negatives. When I can't do something, I'm so pumped because now I have something I can learn to do. I get to learn new. That's just how my mind thinks. And I pass that to my children. Like, yes, this is hard. You're going to learn a new subject. You're going to make new friends. You're going to have to try out for a new team. This is my son's first year playing football. He's been getting wrecked because he doesn't know the holds. He doesn't know how to properly block, how to position himself. He's learning very quickly. But I mean, I'm pretty sure he has a black eye right now from him and one other kid smashing heads. And all in good things. They're becoming friends really quickly because of how intimate football is. But he's so outside his comfort zone. But instead of it being like uncomfortable and I don't want to do this, he's like, wow, what an opportunity. That changes. Like, you just kind of shift your perspective in every single arena. If your child's going to a new school, it's time for you to look at this as like, this is a great opportunity for a new adventure. If your child is struggling with a sport, it's not that you're not a sport or a subject. It's not that you're dumb or lazy or can't do it. It's that we've got to learn some new muscles. Let's go study together. Why should we learn about algebra? Well, let's go look at this bridge. Let's look at all the math that went into this bridge being able to hold those cars over this amount of water for this length. There's so many ways for you to make this fun, engaging, entertaining, and to go to the bullying, I would say too, that you need to have the talk with your children as to when it's acceptable to confront, head on, meet to meet, certain confrontations. And what stood out to me is when Calla was talking about being bullied, I would fight bullies. I did not like bullying. As a kid, I just knew there was something that was dishonorable and wrong about it. And I remember I got into a fight with a bully because he was teasing and knocking books down from this kid that I knew. And I got in a fight with him, and my dad was very angry with me. And I didn't even defend myself. I was like, okay, I just took it. And nobody heard my story. Nobody understood why I was even involved in that fight. And if they had, I think they would have known, hey, Zach was doing the right thing, just maybe the wrong way, but he did the right thing and from a good place. Make sure your children know where you stand on confrontation. You know, getting into fights isn't like some cool run out and do it. But if your child does so, make sure you're listening to their side of the story. Make sure you're listening to what they have going on instead of saying, just go to school and listen to your teacher. Because maybe the teacher's wrong and your child's right. So just keep that open. You know, and again, this is an opportunity for the two of you to learn so much more throughout this academic year.
That's huge, Zach. Yeah, my a couple points. One, a quick funny story. My dad, I remember going into about 4th or 5th grade, my dad sat me down and he said, hey, Ty, you know my friend Alan, you know, from town here. And yeah, I know Alan. He comes around the house, he shoots hoops with us, whatever. My dad told me a story, said, 35 years ago, we were in 6th grade and a bully had actually tied Alan to a tree. He was crying. The whole class was laughing at him. My dad said, you know what I did, Ty? I walked right up. I untied him and I punched the guy who tied him up right in the face. He goes, I got beat down for that and it wasn't a good thing. And he goes, then I got in trouble at home. But he goes, if you ever see anybody having that kind of thing, that's going to be what you do. It's bad. It's just as bad if you witness bullying and you don't step up. And that, maybe right or wrong, that was my dad's talk with me, right? Mine will probably look a little bit different to my daughter and things like that. But, I do think it's very important as a man of the house that you're going to set that tone and have those conversations with our kids because they're going to have them regardless, right? They're going to have them with friends. They're going to have them with other people. So I think it's critical that we kind of set the tone and we let them know, hey, this is when that's okay. This is when that's not okay. And yeah, I think that was well said, Zach.
How would you guys handle your kid being the bully? How would, what kind of things would you share with your children in terms of how do they prepare for a school year? If they're the ones that are, typically instigating, confrontation or misbehaving in the class.
I think Zach made a great point a minute ago that was about setting the messaging around bullying early. So you tying it to honor, I think, is a very powerful message to send, and I love that, and I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna steal that from you, Zach. But I think that's the first step is making sure that we have these conversations and we sort of let our family know that that's one of the values that we follow, is that we don't treat people that way. That's not what we believe in. That's not how we behave. That's not how we act. The other thing I would say that is sort of what I've picked up on over the years, just from meeting a lot of people, is that it seems to me like bullies, when people behave that way toward other people, it's usually coming from a place of insecurity for the bully. There's usually something going on with that bully that isn't great in their life. They're not feeling good about themselves. They're not feeling confident about themselves. And so they lash out at somebody else to make themselves feel better by comparison. That just sort of seems to be the dominant motivation behind that behavior. So if one of my kids did wind up engaging in bullying behavior, not only would I message what sort of the framework that Zach shared, which is like, that's not what we do in our family, but I would be really curious and intentional about trying to discover what's going on. Why are you feeling insecure? Or did maybe we switch schools to a new school and you don't have friends, and so you're feeling like you need to treat other people poorly to make yourself feel better? Dig in with your kids and spend the time investigating, spend the time talking with them, really try to understand what's going on, because they're not bullying because they're bad kids. They're bullying because they're hurting in some way. And we can discover that. And if we can discover it, we can begin to address it.
That's a really good point. And I'm glad you went first, because when Calla asked, I've never viewed my kids in that light. I've always, we've had these discussions, my children are empathetic kids. When we watch movies or like you read The Warrior Kid, I mean, we often talk about bullying. We talk about defending those who can't take care of themselves. So I've never viewed my kids as a bully. But if I were to put them in that position in my mind, it would align 100% with Save Your Sons. I'd be like, there's something wrong. I think they're striving for attention, and just knowing my kids, there's something I'm overlooking. There's something I'm missing, or and this might be a rare situation, but they might not even realize what they're doing is hurting others. They might think the running joke against the kid with who squints because he can't afford glasses. They call him squints. Well, that sounds funny. That's good, but you might not even realize like you're really like breaking that kid down, or he's really insecure about this. So it's really context specific. But Kala, it would go back to the discussion. For parents who haven't done that legwork yet, when you watch movies, when you watch these things, when you read stories, you have the discussion with the child. What did you think about this? How would that make you feel if you were in those shoes? Who's the good guy here? Why? Why do we keep thinking that's the good guy? Why can everybody come to the same agreement that that's the good guy? It's because there is a universal sense of honor, regardless of what people say. There are certain things we view as right and wrong. A big guy picking on a little guy for no reason is wrong. What benefit is there for a 200-pound man tossing around some 10-year-old kids? There's nothing tough about that. There's nothing strong or beneficial about that. So we all understand there is right and wrong, and your children should see that as well. And if there's any misunderstanding about it, they should be comfortable talking to you. And again, if they're the ones getting bullied, which I could see my kids more in that because they're nice kids, like being too kind to somebody. You also tell them, hey, here's your boundary. Here's your line. Here's how you defend it. You do not allow yourself to be pushed around by anybody in the world. Not me, not your mother, and definitely not the outside world. So there's no way that that's to be tolerated. We have our space. This goes back to discussions, though. I don't see this conversation happening as frequently as it should be. And these kids, if we can't talk about it, then they don't know how to act on it. If we don't have these talks and these discussions now, they won't know how to act later. And you want to arm your children with all the tools they need to defend themselves. So the words you use and invest in them now are like little bullets. Hey, you stand your ground, you speak your mind, you stay true to your beliefs. Those are little bullets that when they're tested in the world, they fire out of their heads and their mouths. No, you can't tell me to do this. No, I'm not going to do that. Or, like Tyler said, no, you're not going to tie my friend up. I'm going to untie him. I'm going to punch you in the face. And if I get a beat down, it's worth it because I stood my ground and I did what I knew was right.
Yeah, I think Zach, you just hit the nail on the head, and even circling back to the very first thing you said, and I think this will tie everything that we talk about with school and with fatherhood is it has to always start at home, right? Like we have to prepare them and have those hard discussions with our kids before they go to school. We gotta adequately prepare them and arm them for that. I mean, we've had a real gift and a blessing doing foster care. So my daughter's only 6, but she's seen, and we've had hundreds of conversations around, every time she gets something new or a toy or even the home we live in, hey, this, there's people that don't live like this. And so we, what's our job? Because we are blessed and we do get to give back, to help others, to, never make fun of somebody who might not be in the same spot you are in life, but to help them, and just to have tons and tons of conversations around that. I mean, even we go to church every Sunday and we donate once a month. And that once a month, we actually wait to pick up our daughter. We walk her to the back kiosk. She takes some of her allowance money and donates it. And then she sees mom and dad writing a check too. And we talk about it. Hey, that's to buy backpacks for kids that are less fortunate. This is why that's important. This is why, and just having all those conversations so that it's not like she just shows up at school one day and this stuff's happening and she's like a deer in headlights. You have to prepare them before.
Yeah, and we're at a massive advantage when it comes to that, which a lot of people don't realize, I think, is that, kids are they're gonna pick things up from their environment. They're gonna model behavior that they see in others. It's how we learn as humans, and it's unavoidable. But there's nobody else, especially when they're at that really impressionable younger age, that they would rather model, that they would rather be like than us. And so we're at an advantage, and they'll want to be like us until we prove that we're unworthy of that modeling behavior. And so what I see as one of my main roles is to always be modeling the behavior that I would want to see in my son as he grows older. And the more we continue to do that, the better off we'll be. And we'll always be one step ahead of whatever bad influences, bad behaviors, bad messaging that they pick up at school or elsewhere, as long as we don't shirk that responsibility and we don't just completely outsource their education and what they're experiencing. We are at an advantage as long as we claim it and as long as we activate it.
You know what's interesting about that, and this is totally shifting gears, but it aligns with what you said. The advantage we have in these discussions with other fathers and other men going into this, I think we're also going to be educating the fathers who might not have had, the understanding of like the depth of discussions needing to be had. And right or wrong, if you weren't brought up in a home where these talks were normalized, you don't even realize that you're missing anything. You're kind of going with here's the way things were, so here's the way things are. And as we have these talks, more and more men are like, oh, so I should be talking to my kid about this, and this. My dad never talked to me about that. So when we can start the talks, it really sets these men ahead of the curve. And I think a disadvantage to being online and in this space is if you're not a squared away, 6-figure, 6-foot, 6-pack, homeschooled family, you're wrong. You're failing at life and you're this horrible everything. And I think sometimes men get so caught up in that. They're like, oh, I don't do enough, because I'm not homeschooling. Hey, man, if your schedule doesn't allow you to homeschool, then just be involved in your child's life. If they have to go to public school or you can't get them into private or a charter school, do your best. This is less about literally checking a box of status for others to see and more about your relationship with your child and their relationship with their education. This has very little to do with, flexing who's going to what school or, homeschool elite. I see that tossed around a lot. And as somebody, I like to, maybe I'm the worst online guru there could be, but I went from homeschool to public school because I'm like, I'm not playing this stupid game of status. I want my kids to have what's best. It's about them, not how I appear online. And I just want to set that as a reminder for all other fathers listening to this and mothers. I don't care, and you shouldn't care, the optics on the internet. Your Twitter likes, the shares, the tweet, like whatever, the viral thing you can get going, that doesn't mean a dang thing compared to your relationship with your son and your daughter and their relationship with their education. So I just want to keep that on the table throughout all of this.
And that's important, Zach. And homeschooling, while I believe it's a great option for a lot of people, like we were saying earlier, it's not, and like you just said, it's not an option for everybody. And the other thing that's important to remember, which I'll reiterate where you were going with it, Zach, is that homeschooling, you can mess up a kid way worse by homeschooling them than you ever could by sending them to public school if you don't have your act together. I'd much rather be a dad who's clicking on all cylinders, who is giving my kids the right messaging at home, and they go to a public school, than be a homeschool dad who doesn't have it all together. I mean, it's not a magic bullet. It's not a one size fits all solution for everybody. It's just as easy to have a bad outcome from homeschooling as it is from public schooling, just maybe for different reasons.
And again, it's 10:36. If you have a question and you're in here, ask it. This is the perfect opportunity to get pretty much 4-on-1 feedback. So you can get several inputs on your specific situation. Because if not, I mean, the four of us can just riff because that's what we do. And this is a topic we all enjoy discussing. But, as the questions come in, you can get a more personalized response. So if it's in your heart or in your mind, just shoot it out there. Because if you're thinking it, there's probably 5-10 other guys who want to ask it, or it's going through their mind as well. So if you have questions, ask them. Good. If not, we're going to keep rolling. But Save Your Sons, I think that's also why it's so important that as adults, we're continuing to push ourselves as well. It's hard to relate to a child who's struggling with a subject if you yourself have not struggled with learning, in the past 6 years. There's a lot online that I try to teach myself and learn that's very difficult for me, but that helps me better relate to my kids. So we talk about always be learning, always be improving. It's a real thing. It's not looking at the kids, hey, you should practice for your sport. You should study. You should read. I recently shared how I was sitting down and reading with my kids. I want them to see me struggling too. I want them to see me learning and reading and working out, because when they see it, they don't get this weird complex that, oh, you do these things until you get married and then you can relax.
Man, that's perfect, man. I love that. And, I'll share a quick one here real quick. I picked my daughter up from swim a few days ago, drop her off at school, and then I pick her up and we're going to swim practice. And I scoop her up from school, and the first thing she does with tears in her eyes is say, "Daddy, I'm so sorry. I forgot my swimsuit today. I looked in my backpack and I didn't pack it. And so there's my opportunity right there. I've seen other parents. I've been that other parent where, how could you forget? I mean, it was such an opportunity. It ended up being one of the coolest things ever, where I said, you know what, baby, that's no big. Daddy forgot his water when I was coming to pick you up. Daddy forgets things every day. And then I listed, she has 13 things to remember between her folders, her lunch, her shoes, her backpack, all these things. And I said, you know what? You remember 12 out of 13. That's pretty darn good, baby. Let's go home. We were 6 minutes late to swim. Who cares? Not a big deal. We game planned on the car ride. How can we prevent this in the future? Which was, hey, we'll pack the car the night before, make sure it's all done. And I just kept reiterating, you know what, Tinny? Daddy fails every single day. These little mistakes are going to happen. You're a human being. You're not perfect. It's okay. We learn, we grow through these. It's actually a great thing. And it ended up being one of the best moments that and I look for these as a father all the time, these little moments that we can share and let her know, like Zach said, hey, Daddy's not some perfect dude sitting up here, like I struggle all the time. I want her to know that I struggle, that mom struggles, my wife's real big about that too. Hey, we all make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we grow.
Dude, I love that story so much because I can relate to that, having that other parent. And I'm always being mindful of my kid when, like, I don't know, like I truly believe that I'm biased obviously, but I truly believe that like children just want to like impress you like instinctively. They want to see how proud you are of them, and like so when they do come up to you of like being like hesitant because they failed, yeah, you got to put yourself in their frame of mind of like they're coming to you with courage kind of thing, like and as a father or a parent, you got to be there, like you got to know, you got to convince and assure your kid that they can come to you if they fail so that you can help them and not scold them. You don't want them to be discouraged to come to you if they failed. You want them to come to you if they fail. So you got to respond and take those opportunities, like you said, take those opportunities to respond in a way where they feel it's safe to come to you um, when they think that they've made like a big failure or whatever it is, even though it's something really small. Does anybody have any questions or?
I think Raj has his hand up.
Okay,
He has a
yeah,
question.
let's do it. Raj, you up?
Yo, what's good, boys? First off, I'm not a father and nowhere near close, but I just want to say I've got a lot of value from like what you guys have been doing this whole space. And I think it's awesome. And I feel like by the time that day comes, I'll be extremely well prepared. And, things like obviously this community and what you guys are doing are a huge part of that. So I can personally just want to thank you guys and say I'm grateful. I know a lot of guys here feel the same way. So I just want to touch on something Zach said about how like homeschooling people will do it for the sort of like to the status purposes, and I see that a lot on Twitter. For example, let's say cold showers. Like you might not even like a cold shower, but because you see people talk about it, you want to do it and preach it. So tying that into my actual question is, what do you think the real benefits of homeschooling are, and like the adequate reasons to do so? Because I don't know if you guys know, but I'm an online coach. So one of the benefits of that is like time freedom. So it could definitely be something I would consider in the future.
First of all, Raj, I'll say I tried. I got sucked into the guru stuff a few years ago. People preaching cold showers. Tried it one time, never again. That is a hill I will absolutely die on. A warm shower is one of the greatest blessings we can receive as a human, and I will never sacrifice that for the misery of a cold shower. So if you're listening to this and you don't want to take a cold shower, don't feel bad. You're not alone, because that was a terrible feeling whenever I tried that.
100%, bro. I tried it for like a month, and then I was like, all right, I'm done.
No, man, life's too short, and like warm showers are great, man. Come on. No, I don't pretend to know the actual benefits of a cold shower. Maybe they really help people. So if they work for you, that's great. And it's kind of the same thing with homeschooling. And I think your question is like, what are the true benefits? And what draws a lot of people to it is that they don't agree with the messaging that is predominant in our school systems. I think that's probably if there was a pie chart of the reasons people send their kids to homeschool, the biggest piece of the pie would probably be that people don't like what kids are getting taught. And it could be anything from, the way they're being taught Common Core math to the way they're being taught about CRT or some of the other more sort of controversial things that are in the news. And that's a very valid reason, because messaging, I talk about this all the time, and I really believe it. Messaging is everything. The words we use are far more powerful than anybody wants to admit. And the most basic form of mind control is repetition. And when you're at school or when you're watching TV or when you're engaging in any type of media, what you're getting is repetition. And so what you're getting is a very powerful effect on what shapes the reality of a child and the worldview of a child. And so if there is something that's happening in schools, this is, I think, what drives a lot of people to seeing homeschooling as their best option. If you think there's something happening in that school that is unhealthy, or that's a message that you don't want your kids to receive, the only way to prevent that a lot of people see is to pull them out and to take control of the messaging at home. And it's valid in that way, 100%. But the messaging, they're going to be brainwashed one way or the other. It's just part of being a human. We're going to be product of what we consume. And so if what is being consumed at school makes parents uneasy or makes parents uncomfortable, a reaction to that is to take them home and take control of what's being received and what's being consumed. I think that would be the main reason. But I'd be interested to hear the other guys' thoughts on rationales.
Yeah, so last year was our first year homeschooling, and it aligned a lot with what you were saying. So there's kind of two fronts I want to attack here. First, I'll hit the homeschooling question head on. You can give your child a much more individualized education and lesson plan. So instead of talking about Revolutionary War or whatever subject you're covering, I lived in Rhode Island at the time. We could go to Boston. We could go to Boston Harbor. We could go to Connecticut. We could go to all these sites, and I could show them in person, this is where this happened. In school, they can't do that. In school, they're confined because it's pretty much bulk education, which is based off, I believe, a factory model of how to get people in to do a lot of the same thing, cram information and get them out as efficiently as possible. I don't want my child to be sheep. I don't want them to be cattle that's pushed around. Here's math, here's this, here's that. It's boring. No, I want them to really enjoy what it is they're learning. I really want them to really learn and learn how to learn and not how to listen and memorize. So homeschooling allowed us to do that. It allowed us to give an individualized plan to them, but also my kids didn't have to wake up at 6 a.m. They could wake up when they needed to wake up. They would sleep in a little bit and they'd wake up. We'd start our day. We could have breakfast and work out, and then we could start all of our lessons. We could do our lessons till lunch, and then at lunch we could go on a vacation. At lunch we could go to a site. We could go to the park. We could go do something. Then they would come back and sit down. So my kids weren't chained to a desk. They were able to learn in a much healthier environment that allowed them to move freely. They could get up in the middle of class if they wanted to go for a sprint around the house. We encouraged that, instead of just sitting and writing and sitting and writing. So homeschooling allowed us to put our kids in position to sleep better, to move more, to just be more engaged with the subjects. And then the last front, on the cold showers, I firmly believe in doing what works. Again, I'm a horrible guru. Don't follow me if you want to get a lot of followers and things like that. I do the opposite. And maybe that's kind of why it works for me is like, dude, do you? I eat carbs. I eat bread. I eat meat. I lift. I work out. I'm not carnivore. I don't identify with my foods. I hate cold showers. I did them once for a 31 DTM challenge I ran. I hated it. Dude, they're horrible.
Dude, it's so bad.
Dude, it's for real, man. Like, people talk circulation in your skin. I don't care. I work too hard to take I'll take maybe 1 or 2 a year just to satisfy my buddy Jeff Putnam. But no, I don't do that. I don't like to play this game where I'm like, oh, let me check this box and that makes me happy. Like, I do what makes me happy. Obviously, I try to show as much as I can to let you see, like, I am living this life. My relationship with my children's great. My spouse is great. I don't need to check some weird boxes of I only eat meat and I take cold showers and now I'm a man. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, don't
It's almost like we're all individuals.
I appreciate you guys. That definitely really answered the question really well. And if anything, it made me just see homeschooling as an extremely viable option. Those are just all really good benefits. And, completely agree with the fact that, you shouldn't do just because your guru says to do something, that doesn't mean you should do it. Do what works for you and what's sustainable and what you enjoy. Find the balance. Just one last thing is for me, the only downside I would see, like, out of like that I can think of homeschooling that I want to get your opinion on is like socializing with other kids their age and like making friends and like going randomly approaching someone they want to talk to, like playing basketball and lunch, that type of things. Do you think that, like, how would you make up for that?
I think you build community around where you live too, and there's probably community around. My wife's really active in like foster community because that's what we do, right? So even yesterday, we picked up 3 kids that none of my kids ever met before and took them to a playland and played for 3.5 hours. And now, guess what? My daughter's friends with them. We didn't sit there and monitor the whole thing. They go play. We lead some hide and seek and some things like that. And kids are kids, man. They just start playing, right? So I think you got to be intentional about that and put your kids. You don't just want to keep them at home all day. But get them out in the community, man. I mean, me and my family, we take walks every single day, multiple times. We're meeting neighbors, always on the lookout for kids that are playing. Hey, we live down at this house. You guys want to meet at the park here in a couple of days? We're just always having these conversations. And I feel like our house is kind of a zoo because of it. But, that's how we enjoy it. And that's how we get our kids, acclimated to a ton of different people.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's exactly what we did because of COVID in the last couple of years. A lot of sports and recreational stuff were kind of prohibited up here in Canada, and but there was like a lot of private or people doing things or hosting things in their home. And one thing that we found was forest kindergarten, which is basically kindergarten that's like there's children just spending their time outdoors. And the more we looked into it, it's pretty cool. I've never heard of it before, but it was because we like looked at things at like more of a local level. We joined like um, Facebook groups that were exclusive to our area and our district. So yeah, it's a great point. Building the community around your home, being local, is a great way for your kids to be engaging with other kids outside of school, for sure. I think we have
Yeah, no,
another
really
question.
good points there.
That's it.
And I feel like just to add on that,
Yeah.
so that, like the place where you live in, like the community, and like if it's got a lot of like families around there, that just makes what you're saying a lot easier to do. So that's just something to keep in mind for sure.
Big reason we picked where we live, Raj, is dude, when my wife and I visited this neighborhood, we saw 50 families out riding their bikes, playing. There's parks everywhere. There's, little water parks, splash pads, tons of stuff to do. So that was a huge reason we decided to live where we live.
100%. I mean, location, like especially when raising a family, is always going to be key, but especially homeschooling, that's definitely got to be one of your top priorities. Makes a lot of sense, bro.
Can I add something to the homeschooling discussion?
Absolutely. Diego, what's up?
How are you guys? Hope everything is okay with you. So I have 3 kids, right? And I had like this similar to homeschooling experience with all this COVID. I live in Uruguay. And you know what's strange is that I'm not a teacher, right? I can teach values, right? But I'm not good teaching on like how to read, right? How to do math. And I found that you need to have special. You need to prepare yourself to teach, right? I can teach values. I teach values to my kids like all the time. Everything that I do is meant to teach some sort of value, um, resilience, But the other more technical stuff, it's really really hard. It's not easy for someone who's not a teacher. Actually, here's my baby, but that's kind of just a second, baby. So that's the downside that I saw with homeschooling, right? I knew I was failing at teaching uh, curricular stuff, like our kids need to learn to read and write, and I do not know how to teach that. So I need a teacher for that. So, and also the socializing with other kids. You know what happened with my kids? At first, we started like this homeschooling stuff, and it was, downsides, upsides, but all of a sudden, and we do have a community around our neighborhood. But my eldest kid, he just turned 7 the other day. He missed his friends. He missed his school friends. Right? They He had like this special bond with the kids at school that he didn't have with the kids at our neighborhood, which are lovely kids, right? They love to play. But that's kind of, I think there should be, this is my opinion, right? I think there should be kind of a balance. And you can homeschool, but there are other stuff. There's certain subjects, right, or certain things that kids need to learn that they need someone more prepared, or at least in my opinion, because I'm not prepared to teach certain subjects, like I said.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot with what Save Your Sons was bringing up, that it's better to be having the right messaging at home and sending your kid to school versus homeschooling and being someone who doesn't have it all together. So, yeah, great point for sure.
Yeah, and Diego, I mean, it sounds like you're doing great, man. And good morning to your baby there. And it's not even about. I wouldn't even say like the risk is that a dad doesn't have it all together. That's obviously a risk. If you're struggling or your life's a mess, like how could you pour into your kids in the way that you need to? And that goes for whether you're homeschooling or not.
Yeah, sorry, just to make it clear, I was not saying that you don't have it all together.
No, I know. I didn't want that to be the takeaway either, but because you definitely sounds like you're doing all the right things, man. But like, for example, I could never in a million years, well, maybe in a million years, I could learn it, but I couldn't teach my kids calculus. I'm not equipped to do that. If that's what they want to learn and that's what they need to learn, I'm not able or equipped to do that. And there's a lot of resources out there where parents can sort of learn themselves and be a few steps ahead of their kids and what their kids are learning. But there's always going to be better teachers out there than us when it comes to certain subjects. And so I think it's important to remain open-minded and important to remain curious about, well, am I really the best person to be teaching this particular subject, or would I be doing better for my kids if I found somebody who was more experienced and more knowledgeable than me?
Totally. And I'm thinking also, because I've thought about this, of, how you get coaches now for everything, fitness coaches, business coaches. I'm thinking about that for kids as well, right? Because there shouldn't be school or a homeschool. There are two, like, those are not just the two options, right? I think there should be a third wave, right, on how to teach and educate your kids, right? And I think all the, internet, all the access to teachers and coaches and mentors from all over the world in the most different subjects is something that, at least myself, I know that I'm not capitalizing, but there's a lot of opportunity there for educating our kids as well.
I mean, the internet has really shrunk the world. We have access to infinite information. If you can find the right tutor to teach what you don't know, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. I had a man who's inside FOE. I put him on Zoom and he taught my kids how to make bread for one of our culinary classes. And this dude in Arizona, live session, like in person, very like live, they made bread and he taught them how. So from my kitchen to his, it was the coolest thing. And he taught me how to make bread. And it's a really cool skill to have. But I don't ever want it to be lost. And I think some men are really hard on themselves with this aspect of it. That when you don't know something, or if you think you're failing the family, your job is not to have every answer to every potential question that could be on a test in life. Your job is to love your child and give them your best effort. Don't ever, as long as you're doing that, you can figure out the math, you can figure out the writing, you can find the tutor, but don't ever beat yourself up to where now you're mentally in a negative mindset. Like, you're doing good, man. You just do your best. Like I said, last year was our first year.
Exactly.
And we had no idea what we were doing, but we had a great time. We learned some things, and you know what? I call it a win.
Totally in agreement.
Cool. I think Casey, you should have something to ask or share. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Kala, and good morning, Tyler, Save Your Son, Zach. Glad to be here. I've been enjoying the conversation so far, and I just wanted to bring up a couple points. First, to address Diego, I'm coming from, I was a teacher for 15 years. And so I can share some insights, especially during COVID. It was tough. I actually had to take over the teaching because of my experience, and my wife, this was something that she just, we had to we ended up having to switch our schedules around to where I had to work more nights in order to like be with my 5-year-old during the day, because it's impossible. If you're not a teacher, if you haven't been in that situation, it's tough. um, but one thing I wanted to say is, teachers are very receptive to, like, if you don't know how to do some of the homework, or if there's things that you don't understand, you should email them. If they have an email, phone number, or contact them, because they are itching. They want parent participation. When you get parent participation as a teacher, like, that's like, oh my gosh, it's like that light. It's so exhilarating because we don't get it enough. We don't get that parental input, and that wants to actually be in that relationship with both the kid and the teacher to make their kid better. So reach out to them, because I actually ended up starting, in the last school I was at. We had enough parents that were reaching out that, like, Monday afternoons, we stayed for 20 minutes and we went over what we were doing for the homework. Like, here's what you can teach your kids. This is the concept that we're learning in class. And you give them some tools. There was only 5 or 6 parents in there, but you know what? It made the difference. And we want that, because there's so many times that we just don't get that involvement from the parents, and it shows in the kids. Like, whose kid has a parent that's involved and which doesn't. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. And then my second point is, again, going back to my experience as a teacher. I started out as a middle school teacher, and then I transitioned to elementary school at near the end of my career. And um elementary school it's busy work the entire day. You go from 8:30 to about 2:30, and in that time, the instruction, you may have an hour of an instruction the entire day. So going back to the original points, when everybody was first talking, is that you have to when your kid gets home from school, you need to be asking them, you need to be on them, because they're we have not been able to cover everything in the day. We just have not. For math, it got to the point where it's tough, because as a teacher, you have to push through this curriculum. And I sort of rebelled against this. This is part of why I'm not teaching anymore, because you have to, it's like a cog in a system, right? You have to just go through it. I wouldn't go through our math book the entire year. I may have gotten through 4 or 5 chapters, but my kids knew those 4 or 5 chapters. And that was more important to me than flying through the book. The other thing is, I found that less is more. So we started doing one math problem a night, or one math problem a day. It wasn't like 20 problems on a page. We learned one math problem. We practiced that math problem, and their homework for the night was to teach their parents the math problem or to do their own. And I find that sometimes we get caught up with, like, doing so much. And so I think just quality over quantity can be really beneficial. But just to drive home the point, you have to be on top of your kids, because they're not learning it there. Just to be 100% real, like, we don't have time, especially when you have 25, 30 kids in a class. There's no way. There's no way. So.
Thanks, Casey. That I love what you said about the great reminder you gave about feedback. I mean, feedback's such an important thing for anybody who's doing any job. It's really hard to do a job if you aren't getting feedback on how you're doing from it, so you can learn and so you can be encouraged to keep getting better. And you saying that really made it click for me. Like, where would teachers get that feedback if not from engaged parents? So that's a great reminder. Thank you.
It's funny
Casey,
when you
you remain undefeated for me too, man. Every interaction we've ever had, I've enjoyed. I appreciate that one too, man. That made me better. I appreciate that. I do have to hop off, guys. We have our 1-year-old and 10-month-old in their first gym, so I'm taking them there here.
Hey,
But I was blessed to be on this. I appreciate it. Thanks, and I hope everybody has great days.
Have a good one, Tyler.
Thanks, brother.
Later, bro.
Have a good one, man.
Cool. Do we have time for one more? I think we got Fatherhood Reforged here.
Let's do it.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in as a home educating father, who has been home educating his children now for almost 3 years, alongside my wife. Obviously, she actually does most of it because I work. But I just wanted to clarify up a couple of points. First of all, nobody knows everything, as you guys have said. Quite often, my wife and I find that we're moving on to the next subject, and we have no idea. Certainly, when it comes to certain things like history, European history, British history, and it's daunting. It can be frightening, but it's just a case of learning as your children learn as well, which we found has been great for us. It's been great to bond as a couple, but also as a family, and to do the research and just to grow ourselves in and of ourselves with just learning new things about history, science, maths, re-jogging some old memories. I know. I think Tyler brought up calculus, and you'd be surprised what is in the deep recesses of your brain that comes back all of a sudden. But also to build on Casey's point, if people are frightened of homeschooling and worrying or anxious, you realize that you don't actually have to fit in that much throughout the day. And when people often compare it to school, but people don't factor in all of the non-learning, the time that is actually spent in school. So lunch breaks, other breaks, but all the administrative stuff that's involved, such as managing 30 children, maintaining their attention, handing out 30 worksheets, making sure everyone's completed the worksheet before moving on. So when it boils down to it, you don't actually have to spend that much time to equate the same amount that school does to actually learning. And that frees up time for a multitude of other things than just play. And play is great, certainly when they're younger, certainly when they're elementary school age, but also then other skills you may want them to learn, or other things you may personally wish to instill within your children, values and morals, or other bits of education that they find really fascinating, like medieval history or Asian culture or anything. You can really divert and spend a lot more time to focusing on those things. And another point is that I want to clarify between, I know a lot of people have homeschooled over the COVID lockdowns. That's not the same. I don't want to discredit anyone. I don't want to say it was hard for everyone, but the homeschooling that went on during the COVID lockdown was not, certainly not how our family homeschools. It was hard for us as well. One of the biggest perks for us for homeschooling is the freedom that's involved. My kids are out 4 out of the 5 days a week. They're going to see friends. They're going to parks, to museums, to castles. And that hit us hard, or other classes. That hit us hard as well. So for those who may be put off by what happened over COVID, it is completely different. And it is what you make it. If you want it to be different than what happened over COVID, then do it. I understand the first lockdown was difficult. It was hard for us. My kids were trapped indoors, largely. Certainly living in the UK, where the mandates were tougher than some of the US states. But it is by and large the best thing we've ever done. And that's not to say it's suitable for all families, but I think a lot of people write it off before considering it entirely, and it has benefited our family immeasurably. The bond between my daughter and son is so much better than when my daughter was attending school. There's so much stronger, and certainly our family bond is as well. And there's a lot of fatherhood stuff out there that talks about putting your family on a mission, and certainly this for us is a family mission that we all adopt. Every day is a learning day. To learn is to live. To live is to learn. And I just wanted to clarify a couple of points and speak from someone who's actually homeschooled pre-COVID, during COVID, and will continue indefinitely.
Hey man, thanks a lot. That was some great clarifications there. I really like what you said about learning together, and in that last point you said about every day is a learning day, and yeah, we got to remind ourselves of that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem. Thank you so much for giving me the time.
Cool. It's 11:08. How are you guys with time? Or think this is good? Do you have any final thoughts?
My final thought, if I had to drop one, would be to do what we keep talking about on these streams. We can have these chats all day. We can talk nonstop. If you're not going to take the discussion and apply it, then what is really happening? It's great to talk about homeschool, public school, all this. The biggest takeaway was the relationship with your child. If you're not going to do that, if you're not going to ask the questions we talked about, if you're not going to sit and get on their level and engage and hear them out and let them tell you about their world, and you get down and again enter their world, if you're not going to do that, you're going to have suboptimal results. You're going to get frustrated, and it's going to lead to a lot of preventable pain and contention down the line. So if you're here and you're listening to this, it's important that you're applying the information that we're sharing. I don't talk this, I live this. I talk this with you guys, because again, I enjoy the discussion, but this is a lifestyle. It's not a discussion. This is just how we operate, throughout the world. And again, I'll be the one who went from homeschooling to public schooling. I don't want people to claim titles. Your titles don't make you a good dad. It's your relationship with those kids. So do what you can do, put them in the best position. And if there is a situation where you need to shift gears to get them to private school, charter school, or start homeschooling because the public education system is being overrun, then you need to make that happen. Your child should be your number one priority. Work around it. Don't give your job the best of you and your family the rest of you. Well, I can't help you because I got work. Well, find a different job. Find something you can do. Find a way to make it work for the best of yourself and your children. And that is possible, but it only happens if you do the work.
Man, so heavy. That's why I love these talks. These tough conversations. Man, I've grown so much just from the small amount that we've shared and hosted together. Thank you so much, man. It's really about preparing ourselves and connecting with them. It really hit hard with what everyone's talked about today. So grateful, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Pleasure as always.
All right, everyone. Please have a wonderful weekend, and we'll probably do this in another 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.